Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining the Culture Hacks for International Students powered by Chai and Coaching and the Immigrant Project. This is like our first ever collaboration we are doing with another organization, and we are really excited to have Robert Adams, called fondly as Rob, with his cup of chai, who is going to give us some culture hacks. Before we dive right into the agenda, let me tell you a little bit about the Immigrant Project. Our mission is to empower new immigrants to find their first professional job at the earliest. And how we do that is by providing effective tools and meaningful connections. We have a overgrowing team right now of around, we are 10 of us now. So today's session is going to be co-facilitated by Apurva Reddy, who works for the World Bank and lives in DC. I am the other co-founder. I work for Amazon in Seattle. We have other team members all over the place, from East Coast to West Coast, also two of the people in India. So that's like our overgrowing team. And to begin with, we have like 4 broad categories of product offerings called the show and tell, where we do like a domain specific deep dive into the attack plan of the speaker. What were the technical or soft skills that and also their journey in the job search process. We have a fireside chat format which is more like a bi-directional communication with the speaker. We have job hacks, which is like a more broad and generic session from any domain or any field the audience can attend, which is like on resume building, behavioral interviews, etc. And then very recently we had our latest offering, which is the Immigrant Masterclass, which is basically interviews with expert immigrant professionals like C-suite and VP level executives and entrepreneurs who come from a similar immigrant background like we do. So that's like our product offerings. And very recently we launched this survey. Feel free to share this within your network for our social initiative in India, which is called Tip for Change. So we would be sharing this deck. So feel free to share it within your network. So moving on, we have a very special guest and speaker for tonight, which is Robert Adams. Apurva, do you want to take it over to introduce Rob and then kind of co-facilitate the rest of the session?
Thank you, Surbi. Rob, so excited to have you. For people who don't know, who is a student in the US and who might not have heard of Rob, I must tell you, you must be under a rock, because Rob has a one-stop place for everything related to from when you come to the US up until you get your first job. To summarize briefly, Rob calls himself a cross-cultural problem solver, truly, because he has traveled to about 30 countries. Sorry, Rob, you corrected me last time. About 30 countries. He lived in India for a couple of years. That gives him, provides a lot of context from where he's coming on, and he can truly empathize with the students who are coming here. Right now, he's based in Dallas, and he constantly trains not just students, but also organizations in recruiting the right talent, and as well as students, so that they get to their first job or many other skills to make their life in the US smooth. Over to you, Rob.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Apurva and Surbi, for inviting me. I'm really excited, and thanks for coming hanging out on this Wednesday night, everybody. This is my family, my wife, Mel, my daughters, Karis and Lucy. And after college, I studied petroleum engineering, but ended up going to India. That's another fun story for another time. But worked in India for about 8 years doing cross-cultural training, consulting, and research. Kind of started our family there as well. That top picture, we actually did a namkaran, or naming ceremony, for both of our daughters. So they have Indian nicknames. And so in 8 years in India, we learned so much about the culture and loved even making different parts of our family. So Karis, her nickname is Karishma, and Lucy, this was her naming ceremony where we gave her the name Lalita. And back in Dallas, the last 4 years here in Texas, we've loved helping the international community. We volunteer. We live very close to UT Dallas, which has thousands of international students. And so these are some of the girls that stayed with us for the temporary accommodation. We help with the airport pickups, go to the events, and do a lot to volunteer and get other people involved in the international student community. It's really fun. This was me actually made chai. I'm an American chai walla, and we were promoting an event for the Indian Student Association. And that's where Chai and Coaching was born out of a couple of years ago. Just building relationships. And I learned that there's so many resources to come to America, but very little when you actually get here to the US, and seeing all the struggles that people face. And so based on some different inspirations, some friends and I came up with ideas of creating content and a community online to help you guys be more successful in your international student journey here in America. And then this was right before the pandemic. We got to play Holi here in our city, up in the North Dallas suburbs, our library, because there's so many Indians in our community. They put on a big Holi event. It was a lot of fun. It's fun being involved in all the international communities here in the US as well. And we've missed getting to celebrate a lot of these festivals during the pandemic, just like you. So I missed doing the Dandi and Garbra for Navratri a few weeks back, and we'll see what happens with Diwali coming up. One thing to kick off, and I think you guys will get an email, and I'll put the link in the chat here for you guys, but I'm doing a big feedback survey right now. I've gotten several hundred responses, and if you guys are interested to spare a couple minutes, this is a big way to say thanks and give back. But we're trying to just get more information from you guys to make Chai and Coaching better, to help you all in your journey. A few people are gonna win some Amazon gift cards, so it'll be a fun little contest as well, but would love for you guys tonight, tomorrow, to fill out the feedback survey, and that would help me help you guys out. So wanted to make a quick plug for that. But let's talk about networking. So I think Ribu or Apurva.
Amazing introduction. And you know, just now Ribu was saying, and we did a survey for about, I think, a year and a half ago, and we got about 300 to 400, 350 responses, and about 80 to 90% of them said the same thing, that exactly what Ribu said, that I apply to hundreds, sometimes thousands of jobs, but getting the first interview is the hardest. So is there a magic sauce? Like, why is this happening? Firstly, why is someone applying for 800 jobs? And these guys, and these students go to some of the top colleges in the US. They're super smart, skilled. They have everything that it takes. I don't think they should be applying for 800 jobs. But tell us what's going on, and crack this code for us, please.
Totally. Yeah, I think there's this myth that students kind of believe and kind of pass on to each other, that the more jobs I apply to, you know, X number of applications is proportional to my chances of getting the job. And that's kind of what the seniors pass on to the new students. And, you know, if I have more applications, then maybe more jobs. But this is, again, it's a philosophy, it's a theory, but it has nothing to do based on the actual US job market, which we're going to be talking about. So you guys are told to network, but you're not really taught why or how. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So if you want to go to this next slide, the real answer, which we're going to break down for you guys, is not the more job applications, but it's the more professionals I know in America, the better chances I have of getting a job. So X isn't based on applications. X is based on relationships with American professionals. And this is one of the biggest issues that we're going to help break down for you guys and get better, which is going to result in equal job opportunities. So we've got a fun poll to kick this off. Apurva's been working really hard to make this poll for us.
Thanks, Rob, for the encouragement. Are you able to see the poll?
So if you guys can go ahead. What percentage of available jobs in America are posted online? What do you guys think? Go ahead and click the answer, and in about 30 seconds, we're going to reveal and see what you guys think. How many jobs that are available in America, what percentage of them can you find online? LinkedIn, Google, Glassdoor, Indeed, company portals. Go ahead and vote.
I think we're done here, Rob. I think everyone finished voting. Okay.
All right, let's see. Can you share those results?
Sure.
Okay, so majority of the people think the majority of the jobs are available online. A few think 100%, a few 50-40, and another chunk 20 to 30. All right, so we got a span across the spectrum. Let's go to the next slide here.
So what is the answer, Rob? What's
the answer
audience
is an iceberg. The iceberg is the answer. So if the US job market, if all the available jobs in America, 100% is this iceberg, only 20 to 30% are above the surface and 70 to 80% are below the surface. So statistically, of all the jobs in America, only 20 to 30% can be found online. So if you're only applying to jobs online, you're only getting access to 20, 30% of all the US jobs. There's lots of research articles, good stuff out there that backs up those statistics. And below it, the 70 to 80% is what experts call the hidden job market, because you can't find it online. That's not part of the formal HR process. And this hidden job market under the water is filled through relationships, networking, and referrals. Again, those come through relationships, networking, and referrals. But in order to have access, you have to know people. That's why your chances of getting a job aren't based on applications, because applications only give you access to that top 20, 30%, but relationships with American professionals get you access to that bottom 70 to 80%. And if you're an F1 student, how many of you guys have had the issue where you apply for a job or get an interview, but then they say no because you need visa sponsorship? Anyone had that issue?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So because if you're an F1 international student, you have cultural issues, which we're going to be talking about today. You've got visa sponsorship issues. There's lots of other issues. So that even shrinks it even more. So if you're applying for jobs online as an F1 international student, you might actually only have access to about 10 to 15% of the US job market, which is why your ROI and your chances are terrible. So applying for jobs online is literally the worst way to get a job in America if you're an F1 international student, based on the way the US job market works.
Wow. Let that sink in, guys. So what everyone responded, I think, is that 80% of jobs would be posted online. What Rob is saying is the number is flipped, right? About 20 to 30, 10, 15 to 20% is posted online, but there are about 70 to 80% positions are floating around, but only within the company or people who are in their very close network have access to. Is that right?
Definitely, definitely. And I've got some more longer videos on Chine coaching that explain and break that down more if you're interested. Or I'm going to kind of hit some surface level stuff just to give you guys some helpful ideas today. But there's more resources out there to go deeper if you're interested. And so what this leads to, kind of this conclusion, is to get a job in America, it's not about what you know, which is technical skills, which is what all you guys spend all your time working on, is technical skills. It's not about who you know. It's not about the number of LinkedIn connections you guys have. It's about who knows you. Who knows you? Because think of being in the position of a recruiting manager or HR person. These job postings get thousands of applications, and you guys all look the same. You have the same resume, same qualification, same LinkedIn profile. How are they going to differentiate? Before they even look at all those thousands of resumes, they go to the team and they say, hey, do you guys know anyone that's a good fit for this? They go for referrals. They check their network. So most jobs that you apply to online are filled in through referrals, networking, and connections before they even look at your application. So most of the time your application doesn't even get viewed because they're trying to fill it through a referral, which is a better hire, and it saves time and money. So it's about who knows you, because when people know you and know your value, that's when you have access to that hidden job market under the surface.
Great. So, now that we know, Rob, of the why of networking, obviously the question demands is, how do you do networking? The word networking, we hear it a lot. We hear it when we're in India. We hear our career counselors say that, go network. But what does it even mean?
Definitely. Yeah, and that's one of the big issues. Probably the biggest problems I've seen with international students and professionals here is they've heard about networking At orientation, you're told to network. Your professors suggest it. The career centers suggest it. But they don't actually teach you why you need to network, and they don't teach you how to network. Therefore, you don't really network, and therefore you struggle to get jobs. So let's talk about how to do this. And I think it's important, this disadvantage that you guys have, this isn't your fault. This is just a reality. You have to understand that it's going to make it even harder for you guys. Most international students, and I'm guessing most people on this call, are from Eastern cultures. So if you're from North America, like me, Europe, Australia, you're Western. And only 1 out of 5 people in the world are Western, and we're the weird ones. 4 out of 5, 80% of the world is Eastern. So Asia, Africa, Middle East, Latin America, you guys are the majority of the world, but you guys are communal and collectivistic cultures. So your job in your culture is to fit together, to have harmony. It's not to stand out. It's not to be different. You're not really encouraged to interact with people that are different than you. And that's okay. That's your culture. And then you have such a wide network. You have these vast families, these communities. In India, they call it the jati, that you have so many relationships so that you don't really ever have to network because you got so many people in your community, and it's a dependent culture where you depend on other people. But in America, we're an independent culture, and we're all about, standing out. We're all about, it's great meeting strangers, doing things differently. And so your culture, you come from a place where networking isn't encouraged. You don't have to network. And then you guys come to America, which is a totally opposite culture, and where networking and building relationships with strangers is the most important thing for you to get a job. And you guys have no experience, and your cultural DNA is programmed to do the opposite. So just as a reality, you guys have a disadvantage. And a couple things here, and later on, I'm going to share 2 books that are going to be helpful resources that'll go deeper in these things I'm talking about. But I want to mention these things for you guys to be aware of. Eastern and Western cultures have major communication differences. Like in the West, we're very direct communicators, and Eastern cultures are very indirect communicators. In the West, what we say is what we mean. But in Eastern cultures, the words that come out of your mouth are not necessarily what's the actual truth, but it's a lot more inference of nonverbal communication. And there's a lot of other things that go on in communication. Simple things like yes and no. How we say yes and no in America is very different how yes and no gets said in India. And so miscommunication happens all the time. That's going to impact your job search as well.
And you made this interesting insight, Rob, when we were talking earlier, that when somebody says a yes, or somebody asks you a question, and when you say probably, in an American culture that says yes, but maybe if somebody from Asia, it probably, when you say probably, I might be indicating it's a no. And that could be like a huge disadvantage in a professional environment, right?
Yeah.
Where you're surrounded by people not necessarily from where you're brought up, but from both Eastern and Western cultures.
Yes, definitely. And along with communication, there's just the relationship differences. Again, in the West, we're individualistic cultures. We're independent. You have to be an initiative taker. You have to be, able to do things on your own and not so dependable on other people, which is normal in your own cultures. But if you're from a communal culture, you're used to being depending on others, making decisions as a group versus an individual. And a big difference in the workplace is the power distance. And power distance is a reference to the relationship between a boss and employee. In Western cultures, it's a very low power distance. It's more egalitarian. It's more equality, and they operate more as peers and friends. But in Eastern cultures, especially Asia, it's a very high power distance where I am the boss and you are the employee. And there's a lot of relational dynamics there with honor and shame. And those work great in their context, but if we're used to one and are going to the other, there's going to be major issues. And a lot of international students struggle to adjust to that closer, low power distance in America, which can really frustrate American bosses with international employees.
Definitely, Rob, definitely. And I think many of us have experienced, I know all of us are students here, and will get to the event eventually to the workplace, but individual and communal is so important even in the interview processes, right? For example, when you get interview questions, or when you get take homes and when you get coding rounds, sometimes it's okay to ask questions, but you don't necessarily depend on them to spoon feed when a task is given. When something is given, that means it's understood, you're going to figure it out. as opposed to back home. I remember that we are constantly asking, but again, I'm not stereotyping. There are people who are independent, there are people who are communal, there are organizations, there are startups, but that work differently. But in the American context, what is valued right from when you're being hired is being independent, being proactive, being a creative, out of the box thinker, and showing that self of yours in the interview process and through the networking that Rob very quickly is going to jump in.
Mm-hmm. So one perception, and kind of mentioned, Reboot mentioned in the comments, is what is networking? So I think people come to America and, okay, I got to network. And they view networking as a means to an end. It's a transaction. If I'm gonna network to get a job, I'm gonna network on LinkedIn to get a referral, I'm gonna connect with this person to get me something. But that is the completely wrong view of networking. Networking is about relationship, and it's about adding value to others. It's about giving, blessing, and serving others. And that's how I view my network. It's not about what I can get or take, or that's what I can give and offer. And, you know, the idea of karma, or karam in India, you know, you reap what you sow. The more you give, then the more you get. So the more you invest into your network, then the more your network is going to give back to you. So that's the better perception of networking. It's about what you can give and invest to others versus what are you going to try and take from people, because people are not going to want to help you if they can sense that you're just a taker.
But Rob, I want that referral. You're saying give, but what is it that I am offering at this point? And like at the end, you're saying meaningful connections, but there's so many people on LinkedIn who reach out asking for a referral. So what
Mm-hmm.
does that giving look like?
Yeah, well, in America, friends hire friends and friends refer friends, not strangers. So if you're a stranger, people aren't going to refer you, people aren't going to hire you, people aren't going to network with you, but I'll drop and do anything for my friends. So the goal of networking is to be a friend, not to be a beggar like everyone else on LinkedIn. So it's about relationships, friendships, and if you can't help somebody unless you know them and know what their needs are. So you have to focus on the relationship first. So if you want to go back real quick, yeah. So again, that perception shift. The more you rely on your resume, the more you have the wrong approach for finding a job. Because if you're focusing on the resume, you're stuck at the very tip of the iceberg. But the more you rely on relationships, that next slide, the more you rely on relationships, the more you have the right approach for finding a job, because that's what gets you access to the hidden job market. The other 70 to 80% of the jobs that are available that are not available online, those come through relationships. So networking is about relationships. That's the core of it, and that should be your priority.
Right.
So,
And also, you know, just because somebody is referring your name, and Rob, we have a lot of speakers at the Immigrant Project, and many admit that yes, they got a job through a referral, but it's not just enough for someone to write your name or write their name in the referral box. That gets probably your CV bumped to the first 30 or first 20. But also, it's very important that someone champions for you, right? Tells the hiring manager, tells the a recruiter, tells everyone in that value chain, kind of. And for that, you need relationships. And in the coming slide, please talk to us and dive as much as you can about the building blocks, I think, of networking and what are the small things, first the baby steps that students can be doing to kind of this meaningful relationship.
Yeah, and here's some of the how-to practical tips. I think this is what networking looks like for me. And again, these are some on the surface things. I've got a lot of other great videos that go deeper on this as well. But again, if networking is not about what I can get, but what I can give, the purpose, that mentality you need to change is networking is not about me. It's never about you. So you need to let that sink in. The more you make networking about yourself, the more it's going to backfire and hurt you rather than help you. So a great perspective to have, and what was a big shift in my mentality, is not viewing as what can I get them to do for me, but is what can I learn from this person? Because everyone has something interesting to teach you. Everyone is different, has different life experiences. Everyone has something to teach you. So be a curious person and try and learn from somebody. And if that's your focus, networking becomes so easy because all you're trying to do is learn from someone. And then that leads to relationship. So a lot of the biggest question I get is, what do I say? What's my pitch? What do I say? I'm nervous. What's the words to say? And the beautiful thing in networking is the best networkers don't say anything at all. The best networkers are the best question askers. If you followed me around at a conference or a networking event, or when I walked onto a college campus in India, I would sound like a broken record because I'm just asking the same 5 to 10 questions over and over and over again. And I'm not even trying to talk about myself at all. But because I'm a great question asker and my focus is learning about people, then they feel valued, they feel special, and they want to get to know me. Because everyone loves being the focus, everyone loves sharing, and when people are interested in them. So be the rare person that is actually interested in someone, and then they're going to totally stand out. And the one biggest foundational thing in the US job search is standing out. And this is one of the best ways to stand out, whether it's at a networking event, in a career or job fair, or in a job interview, is being the best question asker and making that person feel important and special. And you're going to look like different than everyone else who has the same terrible elevator pitch, who's trying to rehearse their script that they've memorized, sounding like a robot, and is only talking about themselves, not caring about the other person at all. And so prepare your questions, experiment, test them out. It takes practice. I've bombed so many conversations. I've bombed walking up to strangers and just trying to start conversations. But all those failures, all those practice have made me an expert at it now, because I've talked to thousands of strangers all over the world. And now I know how to do it well in different parts of the world. And then the goal, you focus on the person, you ask good questions, and then the goal in the conversation is to kind of funnel it towards a common connection point. You just don't want to be asking questions forever. And if you're a good question asker, they're going to ask questions back. But the goal is to find a common interest point that you can bond on, that the relationship can be founded on. So in India, I might be asking questions, then we connect on food or sports or movies or travel. Oh yeah, I've been to your hometown, or oh yeah, I've been to that place. Whatever you can connect on and go deeper on. So here in Dallas, before the pandemic, I took some students to the DFW LinkedIn local monthly meeting. One of my friends, Hirsch, she was giving a fun little presentation about posting content on LinkedIn, videos and stuff. And then it was just kind of a happy hour, food, drink, snack, people hanging out, all these business professionals. There's these young Indian students who, their first time they're nervous. There's a group of like 6 of us around a table, half of international students, half American professionals. And we talked about 30, 40 minutes straight about video games. It had nothing to do with jobs. It had nothing to do with professional stuff. And I was the least video gaming person in that circle, but it was an amazing conversation. Everyone had so much fun. It was a common connection point, and I know that from that night, everyone's going to remember that. Everyone's going to remember those people. That's going to open the door for future relationships and working together, because they found that common point. And at this professional networking event, they talked about their favorite video games for 30 minutes. And that was so much fun. And that's what's going to connect. And I think a big final point I want to make is, when you're networking, when you're doing coffee chats or informational interviews, especially if you're a student or a job seeker, never ask for the job referral, never ask for the job, because that's when it flips back to you're a taker and a beggar. And honestly, you're stating the obvious. Asking for a job referral, if your focus is really networking and building relationships, it's like calling the sky blue or chai brown. Like, obviously, if you're a student, people know you're looking for a job, or if you're at a networking event, And so I say, build the relationship, ask good questions, allow them to get to know you. And then if they're asking questions back, then they're going to obviously find out. Let them bring up the topic. Let them bring up the topic that you're searching for a job, or where you are in your job journey or your career journey. And then when they bring it up, then it's safe to talk about that topic. You know, do the hard work of the relationship, asking good questions, let them bring it up, and then it's safe. Then it's in the context of relationship versus manipulation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Rob, what you're seeing is uncomfortable because we are not used to doing that. But it does make sense. I think everyone, this is something, right? Like this is flipping almost the process where you're talking and you're constantly, think about your time in a career fair or even on a Zoom chat, right? In a Zoom virtual meetup or a happy hour, you're always, it is understood that if you're a student, you are looking for work, but just like keep asking these really smart, sharp, and intelligent questions. Rob, are there any examples that you can give? I know you said ask great questions. We're going to do a role play at some point, and a lot of people, but and you don't know those scripts. We know that. But are there questions that students get started with?
Yeah, the best questions is just genuinely, what do you want to learn about this person? Like, my questions are more personal because I want to get to know them as a person rather than, you know, getting to learn random stuff about a company. You know, I want to make them feel special as a person, because that's where remember, the goal is about friendship, not transaction. And you said it's uncomfortable because, yeah, if you look at an iceberg, getting under the water means having to get wet. You know, a lot of people stay up at the surface because they're dry and it's comfortable, but if you have to get wet under the water, it's uncomfortable. But the people that do that risk, do the hard thing, then they have access to way more of the job market, and that's when jobs come to them versus staying stuck at the top and filling out 1,000 applications for a terrible ROI of 1 or 2 interviews. So you can stay up there, or you can get wet and take a risk and go be where all the other jobs are.
Right. And, you know, also networking is not just about speaking to a person once, right? Okay, you meet someone at a happy hour, you ask these questions, maybe, where are you from? What do you do? Do you like your work? What is the best thing about your job? What is the worst thing about your job? Don't even get to job. Where did you grow up? Right? And then obviously they'll ask questions. But after that conversation at a happy hour, what happens? Like, how is one supposed to, how frequently without bugging them? I mean, you don't want to occupy too much of somebody's real estate, right? Like the real estate time. So do you have any suggestions as to, okay, a person meets someone, has a meaningful conversation, what next?
Yeah, maybe let's go to the virtual tips, and I'll cover that there because that's, I think, will be more practical for the people right now. So how to, you know, network virtually in the age of pandemic and social distancing. So those same principles that I just mentioned in the last slide, those all apply. You know, all those things are still true in the virtual networking world. I've heard so many excuses, but Rob, everything's, you know, all the networking events are done, all the conferences are done. I say no. Actually, networking is now even more accessible to you guys because of the virtual world, because all the networking has gone online. And now, because it doesn't have to be in person, you guys can attend networking stuff all over the country, all over the world, versus just in your city. So this is an incredible opportunity. Meetups are still the best place. Meetup.com. If you haven't been a part of meetups, you are missing out, because the whole purpose of meetups is to go meet people, to connect, to learn, to help each other out. Everyone is there for the same purpose. So there isn't that awkward agenda of what's going on, you know, are people worried about what I'm trying to do here? Meetups, Eventbrite, conferences, webinars, there's so many things online, so many efforts that people are doing. You know, there's so many people on LinkedIn. I know so many HR people that are putting on live events, YouTube, LinkedIn Live, webinars, Zoom. I mean, there's a million things you could do every day, meeting people, learning, connecting. And if you're not, you're just, it's your loss, and you're wasting these awesome opportunities. So there's no excuse for not having opportunities. One of my favorite things that I've learned in this virtual world is, again, it's all about standing out, is to dominate the chat. And not in an annoying way, but again, in a giving, blessing, serving, contributing way. So when I know that there's this awesome HR recruiter or LinkedIn influencer who's hosting a live session, I'm tuning in, I'm cheering them on, I'm encouraging them, I'm liking, and, putting fun emojis on there, being their cheerleader, but then I'm asking good questions. I'm responding to other people's questions in the chat. I'm giving good advice. I'm giving some extra details based on the topic. And then people are noticing, engaging, and I'm having like a separate conversation going on in the chat about what's going on in the presentation. And then the people that are presenting are dialoguing with me because of what's going on in the chat. And then everyone sees, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. This person's a good question asker. And that's how you can stand out. And then so many people then after that connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, because I'm active and investing and adding value to the chat or whatever else is going on during these live presentations, meetups, workshops, whatever. So huge opportunity. If you just go and sit and watch something, that's a huge waste. Like right now, this chat is dead. You guys are missing a big opportunity right now because you're not engaging in the chat. Huge opportunity whenever there's a live presentation going on.
That's a good point, Rob, because most of us only feel that, meetups is when we talk, we ask a question, or just show up and listen. But it's also about not just engaging. I think just to go add one more layer, ask questions, but also ask questions in various forms on LinkedIn, on meetup chats, on any other, on email, like just, okay, please go on.
Yeah. And so kind of the question you asked earlier, what do you do when you connect with someone? And in my opinion, online is not real networking. I don't view LinkedIn as real networking because everything online is not a real relationship. It kind of is now in this weird virtual world, but my goal is to move connections towards your relationships. So unless I've had an in-person meeting with someone, or these days like a face-to-face Zoom call with someone, that hasn't been a real relationship. So the goal is to get to that real relationship or a deeper level of connection. A LinkedIn connection or a LinkedIn message is nothing. An email is a little bit better. A text is a little better. A phone call is a little bit better. A Zoom is a little bit better. An in-person coffee or meal, is the best. And so you can then continue to build that over time on LinkedIn, over an email, over social media. But if you don't have that real personal connection, it's not a real relationship, and people aren't going to refer you or help you because they don't know you. And they don't know your value. It's only through a real relationship can people see your real value and how you're unique and you're worth fighting for. And so it's all about moving towards the relationship and then maintaining it. And then again, it's about giving, adding value, checking in, sharing resources, dialoguing, asking questions, and just as you would build a relationship with a friend over time, same principle applies with networking. View it as a friendship and not a transaction.
Yeah, and so, get up and go meet. It's like dating, right? You need to go out and physically meet a people. And I know it's the pandemic, but there are people still doing, coffee chat walks, takeaway. There's so many other ways that one can collaborate. We have a question, Rob, which is a very interesting question. This is from my friend Natalia, who is from Colombia, and I feel like some people are intimidated when you ask too many questions. Is there too much? Is there too little? I think, where do you find the sweet spot and how do you handle these situations?
Yeah, I've done lots of live sessions, webinars, and I've never felt intimidated when the chat's flying. I think that's awesome. I think the more questions, I think that means I'm actually adding value and people want to learn. When the chat's dead, I'm like, oh, I must be bombing right now, or people aren't really jiving with what I'm talking about. But when the chat's active, that means the content is of quality and people are engaged and wanting to learn and see that I can add value to them. And so I don't think you'll ever be intimidated by asking too many good questions in a chat.
Rob, quickly clarify from Natalia, please feel free to unmute yourself and say something, Natalia, but not you being intimidated, but
Sorry. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like in person mostly. Like, how do you know where to stop? Because I mean, I do feel I ask a lot of questions in general, and I feel sometimes people is like being a little bit like, okay, you ask too much. Like more like, why do you want to know so much about my life? So I don't know. In that case, it's like when you are talking to someone and maybe they are just really saying, oh, yes or no, and they don't really engage in the conversation. I guess in that case, it's better. No, I don't know. I don't know. How do you handle that type of situation?
Yeah. Well, then I think that's just on them. If they're not interested in you asking questions about them, then that's something weird about them. That's not the normal. I would say, and most people would enjoy having people ask genuine questions about themselves because someone is showing interest in them. If someone doesn't like that, then I think that's just a weird social thing with them, and that's not your fault. And so, yeah, and with Ruby, you know, asking too many questions, talking too much. If you're asking good questions, that means you're not the one doing the talking. But if you're asking good questions, they're the one who's doing the talking. And my goal in networking is to do the least amount of talking, because that means I'm winning. Because if they're doing the talking, they're feeling important, they're feeling special, they feel like that they're adding value to you. And so my whole goal is to talk the least amount and allow them to talk the most. That's when I know networking is going well, is when others are talking more because I'm asking good questions.
yeah. Thank you, Rob. And of course, I think you mentioned host your own online events. That's another way where, you know, it's as simple as like posting something on LinkedIn and saying that there's this interesting person we found, I'm going to interview them, show up. It's like that easy.
Yeah.
But let's move on to the role play. I know a lot of people, and feel free to keep typing in your questions while we start with this. So here is the first scenario. Rob is a student, and Rob, you just met me, Apurva, who's a recruiter at a career fair. After standing in line, so Rob is a student, guys, and I am the recruiter, and he's going to show you all how it's done. I guess after standing in line for about 20 minutes, he finally gets a few minutes to speak with Apurva, ask her a few sharp and smart questions, and build a relationship. Rob, how would you navigate this conversation?
All right. Shall we just start and give an example?
Sure. Let's take a few minutes, and then we had a bunch of volunteers. Surbi will take over after this, and Surbi, you can if students are there. Otherwise, we can get somebody from the audience.
Definitely. All right. Hello, my name is Robert Adams. I'm a student here at the college in my first semester studying analytics. So nice to meet you. What's your name?
Hi, Rob. My name is Apurva.
Apurva, so great to meet you. Thanks for coming to our college, spending the time. I bet you're exhausted after talking to so many people today.
Yeah, it is a bit exhausting, but also very energizing because there's so many students, high in energy, high in skill set. So many people are here to share about themselves. So I think it's been a great day so far.
Awesome.
How's your
Apurva,
Rob?
It's been good. I've been preparing and had a couple classes. Where are you visiting from? I know you've come to our college. What's home for you here in America?
DC. I'm from Washington, DC, actually.
Amazing, amazing. I love the sites and the history. Do you have a favorite place there in DC with the history or the monuments at all?
That's a great question. I think I have a few favorite places, but my most recent, I don't know. Have you been to Washington, D.C., Rob?
Yes, a couple times.
Okay. So you must have heard of the Rock Creek Park, right? It's right next to the zoo. It's this kind of Washington, D.C.'s answer to the Central Park. And it has all these amazing trails, but it's super commercial. Like lots of students, everyone is there, especially during the pandemic, because that's one of the safe, possibly safe sanctuaries in the city. But there's this Tree Park or something that I recently, it's a tiny park, looks a lot like Rock Creek Park, but not many people know about it. So that has my most recent gem. But yeah, what's your favorite spot?
Here near the college, there's a nature preserve called Arbor Hills, in the middle of the city, but you feel like you're in a forest. They've got hiking trails and streams and biking paths, and so it's a good green space that we can go and take a break from studies, or make it feel like you're not in a big city anymore.
What is it
So
called, Rob?
Arbor Hills.
Arbor Hills. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to really check it out. So Rob, tell me, why are you at this booth, and what are you looking for, and what's your major?
Yeah, so I'm studying analytics. You're here representing World Bank, which I know is a big entity. I know they do some great stuff, helping people all over the world. What has been your role there at the World Bank?
So Rob, right now I work within the digital learning team.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is, if you'll think of Coursera is a place, it's a MOOC platform, massive, where you have an open source platform where courses are free for everyone. So what we are is kind of the Coursera for the international development, or the multilateral, or the not-for-profit world. That means anything related to public policy, governments, impact related projects, not just in the United States, but we have 60 plus countries. So all of it is right here. We generate learning, knowledge, and our platform is open for our clients, public, and of course our partners who are the government organizations anywhere. So I think
Fantastic.
Yeah. So Rob, can you tell us a bit? This is great, right? Like we are jiving, we're asking each other questions. But what would be, because sometimes there's just 2 to 3 minutes, right? So how would you wrap up a conversation with?
Yeah, like for me, I have several other questions I would ask. I would ask Apoorva what she studied in college that really helped her for her job. I'd ask her what's her favorite aspects of the company culture. I'd ask her if she did anything fun for Halloween this last weekend. I'd ask her if she stayed up late watching the election last night. I'd ask her all these different questions about her work experience, her highlights, her challenges, things about where she's living, American culture or experiences here, and typically they're going to give you more and more time in a conversation because they're enjoying the conversation, because you're different and you're standing out. And the more they enjoy the conversation with you, the more time they're going to give you, versus the people who come with their boring elevator pitch and are begging for jobs. So what you do then is, because you've had an amazing conversation and you've connected on so many fun topics, pick some things from your conversation, whether it's some work experience she had, some course she took in college, or some cool project she's working on. And I'd say, Apoorva, man, that sounds so fascinating. I know you've got so many other people to talk with. Would it be cool to connect? And I'd love to ask you a few more questions about X, that project, that course, this initiative, this value of the company. This really interests me and my future potential career journey. Here's my contact info. Would you mind giving me your email or contact so we could set up a time to ask you a few more questions?
Super. That's so great, Rob. So tell us, how do you all feel about this? Students, y'all can comment. If you read the interviewer's profile beforehand, can you say something like, I saw that you live in LA. I always wanted to visit, or is that a way, Rob? That's the question that Natalia asks.
Yeah, I think if that's genuine, like, oh, I'm an international student, I've always wanted to visit LA, Hollywood, what's something fun I should do as a tourist there, and if that's a genuine interest or question for you, go ahead and ask it. Yeah, because again,
I think I didn't formulate my question well, but it was just mostly like, when you read things beforehand, about this person, is it okay to show that you already know those things? So like kind of show that, yes, I'm interested, I read about you, or it's just better try to know the person?
Yeah. I mean, if you were doing your research and you said, oh yeah, I was checking out your LinkedIn profile and researching the company and applying for the job portals, and I noticed this on your LinkedIn profile, that's legit. Make sure you preface it so that you don't come across as a creepy stalker. But, saying, oh yeah, I was researching the company and the jobs and the recruiters, and, I found this on your profile. May I ask you more about that? And that'll be great. because yeah, that Americans like initiative instead of, you know, them, you know, instead of saying, tell me about the company, they want you to come knowing about the company. Instead of saying what jobs are available, they want to know that you've already applied for these jobs before the job fair, because that's going to make you stand out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great question.
Thank you, Natalia. I mean, I think Oswin has a good point here, Rob. Like, you know, in career fairs, you're like so crunched for time, right? And everything is so focused on the job. You're standing, it's almost like an assembly line. People are like going there, speaking about the CV, dropping it. Like, it's like, so what if there is no common ground for someone to start a conversation?
You just keep asking good questions until you find that connection point. You have your list of go-to questions, and you just keep going. And, you know, some people, it might take a few more questions, but if you can do some research beforehand, or think about that person, that company, where they're from, you know, you can kind of begin to guide your question to something where you might better have something in common. Or you can just talk about a topic that's relevant, like Halloween, sports, the election, something that's not related to the job. Because again, if you're doing what everyone else is doing, you're not going to stand out, and you're going to blend in and get lost in the competition. If you're doing what everyone is not doing, that's going to make you stand out, be remembered, and move to the top of the list for follow-up from these recruiters.
Got it. So that's great, guys. All of y'all are coming up with questions. So your conversation had something in common with Apurva, but what if there's no common ground? For example, guys, if Rob has never been to DC, he could say something like, I want to be in DC. I've heard so much about it. Everyone's heard so much about DC, right? Like, that's one pointer. But what do you say, Rob, if, you know, in the 1.5 minute you speak and you don't discover a commonality?
You guys will be surprised at how quickly and easily it is to get common ground with someone. I think you can easily do it in 3 to 4 questions, if not 5 or 6 tops. You know, it's kind of like that degrees of separation, that game you can play online with Wikipedia or whatever. And so, yeah, you guys will be surprised. Just, you've never done this before, which is why I know it's shocking and nervous, and you guys are doubting me. And again, I'm challenging your cultural DNA, which is why it's hard, because you weren't brought up doing this. Your culture told you not to do this. And you're like, whoa, you know, there's the fear, there's the mistakes, there's the worry, you know, but just trust me. Because when the students actually do this at the job fair, they say, oh, Rob, that recruiter talked to me for 10, 15 minutes. Or that recruiter was so excited to talk again and gave me his personal mobile number, you know, because they were actually able to connect. They were standing out, and they opened the door. Again, you're not going to get the job at a job fair. The goal is to open the door for a relationship, for further conversations and further relationship building, and to be remembered above all the competition.
Got it. Thank you, Rob. Surbi, over to you now. Surbi, I think, has a list of some of the students who booked in advance, who wanted to do a live session. We'll try to do 1 or 2 and wrap up.
I was just going through the list of participants, and looks like only one is here. Nikhil, do you want to unmute yourself? And Nikhil Sarode, are you on? Hi, Nikhil.
Okay, I mean, let's give Nikhil a minute to respond, but if somebody else, please tell us if you want to practice.
Hi, this is Nikhil. Actually, I'm already in India. I was about to come to US for fall 2020, but I deferred it to fall 2021. Got the opportunity to attend the webinar. So, like, I'm in India right now, so I'll get the chance from the LinkedIn. You know, I can network with the people. I'm trying to network with the people who are in my field. I'm already working in IT field in India, so I would like to know, now everything is got virtually, and most of them, like my friends who were went in 2019, when they landed in US, that time they started looking for the job, building for relationship. What kind of advice you can give while in India I can go for the building relationships.
Okay, Rob, probably you can respond to that question. And Nikhil, do you still want to do the role play with Rob? Is my question.
I got it where you have already did that role play. Right now, it would be too early for me because I have not experienced the US culture. So I'll just observe the things. If anyone from the other person want to go for it, I'll observe that.
No
I'm not into that place right now because I have not experienced that.
No problem, Rob. Others, please leave a message in chat while Rob responds to this question if you're interested. Otherwise, Surbi, you can be the next.
Sure, I can volunteer if nobody. Sure, Ribu.
Ribu just volunteered.
But before that, I think we should have Rob answer Nikhil's questions.
Yeah, I'd say the best way to connect with people on LinkedIn is to post good content every day, because that's going to make people want to connect with you. And posting good content every day on LinkedIn is going to display your experience. It's going to help you stand out. So rather than trying to connect with strangers on LinkedIn, which doesn't work very well, cold emails and messaging doesn't work very well, focus, if you're not in America yet, begin building your profile and posting great content. The next best thing is to engage on other people's posts, share their posts, engage in the comments, get kind of making those connections. And then, once you've engaged, you've commented, you've shared, maybe you've shared some helpful resources to them, then you can start that conversation or relationship building over LinkedIn. But if you just message a stranger on LinkedIn trying to connect with them, 99% of the time it doesn't work if you don't have any relevant thing in common. So there's better ways to go about that.
Nikhil, does that respond to your question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we have like Ribu who is willing to volunteer. So you can start the mock session with him, Rob, or
All right. So
Ribu.
Ribu is going to be a student, and I'm going to be a recruiter for Texas Instruments at a college job fair.
Awesome. Sounds good. So I guess you are a beer down, right? That's the context, right?
Yes.
Sorry?
Rob, one beer down in a fairly relaxed state of mind and has been chatting away with young grads in a post-career fair happy hour. Note that Rob is constantly surrounded by students as everyone is eager to get a few minutes with Rob. So how would you navigate this conversation?
All right. Hey, it seems like Rob. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm tired from a busy day. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah. Happier seems nice. So what did you get in?
Sorry, what?
Happier seems nice. So what are you coming from? A career fair?
Yeah, I was just at the college career fair all day.
Oh, that sounds
You
exhausting.
attend?
Unfortunately, I could not attend tonight. I had some other commitments, but I would definitely, want to network with people. Tell me about it. How did that go?
It was good. I talked to hundreds and hundreds of students at the career fair at the college today.
Oh, really? Did anyone say that you kind of look like Jim Carrey?
No, I've not heard that.
Okay, so I'll be the first one. So, which company are you from?
I work with Texas Instruments.
Oh, interesting. A couple of my friends interned at Texas Instruments during their bachelor's. They had an electrical engineering background, and I feel that is where most of the jobs lie in that company. That's cool. I'm kind of in a similar field as well, so it's pretty interesting to know about that. I'm studying telecommunications, so it's kind of like electrical.
What made you want to study telecom?
Honestly, I started off as a computer science major, but I realized that it was not 100% of what I wanted to do. So I kind of switched to telecommunications because it has the engineering aspects, and there are some other aspects that I would like to work on, like networking, and it is pretty cool.
Awesome. Ribu, are you an international student?
Yeah, I'm from India, so I'm studying on an F1 visa right now.
Oh, very cool. You want to know a fun fact?
Sure.
So Texas Instruments was the very first American company to offshore and set up an office in India in the 1980s in Bangalore. That started the whole IT revolution there in India.
Wow, that's a good trivia point. I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now I see that Bangalore is kind of like the Silicon Valley for the country. Like the city is swarmed with multinationals, and a lot of the Indian startups have also flooded the city, and they have started to move on to different cities as well. So good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Ribu, I think I'll just interject. Ribu, start asking Rob some questions. So far, Rob has been asking you questions, but so far what we learned is we should start. So right now he said he's from Texas Instruments. He spoke about India. You spoke about Bangalore, which was a nice connection point. What are some of the questions that you would ask him? You can take a minute, think about it, no stress.
Yeah, I guess. So Rob, do you want to tell me what kind of roles or what kind of people were you looking for in the job fair?
Yeah, I mean, Texas Instrument is so vast. It's one of the biggest companies here in the Dallas area where I'm from. And so we recruit all sorts of engineers. We recruit a lot of PhD and lab. We do a lot of cutting edge research. People just think of Texas Instrument as the calculators, but we do a lot of chips and microchip processing, a lot of electronics, defense stuff. I mean, all disciplines of IT, engineering, some really fun cutting edge research stuff. So we have a big array of different types of people and backgrounds and degrees that we're recruiting for.
Wow, that's very cool. It sounds like you could hire a bunch of people. So would you usually go for fresh graduates, or do you look for masters or PhD students to serve in the labs and research fields that you work in?
Yeah, a lot of it just depends on the role, the project, the team. So we kind of take people from all different levels.
Oh, that's cool. So then I haven't worked in an American multinational, but I've heard that the system is a kind of a flat hierarchy instead of big power difference, like compared to the Indian context. Does that hold true for TI as well?
I think so. What you said something was flat?
Yeah, like a flat hierarchy. So, you can reach out to your managers, your manager's manager, talk to them, have conversations, and you can be forthright about, any problems you're facing or something like that.
Definitely. Yeah, that's true. Definitely in American culture and at TI, it's very close relationships. You're working closely, not just with your team, but people all throughout the company, approaching people directly. There's a lot of openness and transparency and great teamwork that happens throughout the company because we have to have that to be successful.
Very cool. So I had something upon teamwork and communication. So would you say that you are really happy and feel connected at the job that you're working in? How does that align with your personal goals?
Great.
Yeah.
Ribu and Rob, I think we are running out of, I think those are great questions, Ribu. But Rob, do you want to take, before Surbi wraps up, about a minute or so to provide Ribu some feedback?
Sure. Yeah, I think obviously Ribu is kind of put on the spot, so you're definitely thinking, which is totally fine. But in the situation, I have like a list of questions in my back pocket. I always have kind of 5 to 10 questions that I know that I'm wanting to try and ask. That way I don't have to think of questions on the spot. That just takes with preparation and practice. That way you're not kind of having to sit there and stall and think, okay, what's another good question? And so that's just always helpful in any situation, just comes with practice.
So what are these questions, Rob? Like you said, what are these questions? What are the 3 or 4 questions, I think, that are always in your arsenal?
Yeah, I mean, where are you from? What are you doing? You know, whether it's studies or work. What do you like to do for fun outside of what you do? What do you do for fun outside of studies? What do you do outside of work? What's something that you enjoy or special about your city, where you live, where you're from? What's something I want to learn about their culture, or something that's happening, going on from their country, their culture? You know, asking a specific question about their work experience, which he was kind of trying to get to there at the end. You know, their work experience, projects, highlights, challenges, those are all great. Lessons learned.
Super. Thank you, Rob. I think that's super helpful.
All right, so a couple of the resources. This book here, the Power Ties one, is where kind of the iceberg analogy come from. And it totally breaks down how the US job market works. This book goes even into more detail why, as an international student, it's a big waste of time to apply for jobs online, and why referrals, networking, relationships, you know, informational interviews, Power Ties is these relationships that get you access to the hidden job market. And then speaking of India, is a great cross-cultural communication book, specifically between India and America, but I think it applies to most international students. And that's where some of those cultural things I kind of hinted to goes a lot deeper. If you're an international student or professional in America and you haven't read these books, you are missing out. So I'm sticking the links in the chat, and I know they're going to email it out to you guys, but these are the 2 best books that if you're here studying and trying to work in America, these are going to give you a huge advantage over everyone else in all the competition.
Super. Thank you, Rob. I think that was fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time, and some of those questions, especially the 5 to 10 questions that Rob provided, guys. I think he legit gave you all a script. He's very against giving template script, but he gave all of them 5 to 10 questions, right? That you all can pull out of your back pocket from your phone and just rehearse on your way to speaking with Rob. Surbi, do we have any other last minute housekeeping? And you can...
I think we answered pretty much all the questions. We slightly went overboard with the time. I know people on the East Coast are like, it's past like 10 p.m. So I think I would just say that thank you so much everybody for attending tonight's session. I know this week has been like crazy with all the screen time fatigue and all the ups and lows that everybody's going through. And thank you so much, Rob, for like doing this with us. Just for you guys know that it's taken us almost a month of prep time to come up with this session, from like scheduling the availability to actually making the slide deck and doing the dry run with Rob. So we are going to send out a feedback survey, and also going to be resharing all the resources to the books and the survey that Rob shared from Chai and Coaching as well. So please, if we would really appreciate if you would give us some feedback, and so that we come up with better sessions going forward. And feel free to follow Chai and Coaching and the Immigrant Project on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. And yeah, I think it was great having everybody today. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys for coming. It was a lot of fun. Great questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Natalia.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yo, thank you, Rob. That was fantastic. What did you think?
It was fun.
You can stop recording, Apurva.
Yes, I did. Oh, didn't I? Oopsie.